Or this is a great photograph because it feels like, oh, this is a moment right before, I don't know, the Marie Antoinette moment, or it's like it's just getting so close you can kind of taste it, but it's also a beautifully composed, probably taken on a cell phone, but just an amazing photograph. This ostentatious, it feels like the end of like the peak Weimar moment, kind of the end of like this gilded age where everything was so close. This massive wealth discrepancy, where you have people with their $90 million jets. Each one has their own jet and a $300,000 car, driving to an airport, driving past homeless tent cities, people suffering, being homeless, suffering, their own people in their own nation, though they don't really consider themselves their people. It's just a commercial zone run by NGOs. Driving past those tent cities with the windows up, tinted windows, to drive to their $80 million jets, to just burn as much carbon as possible, to fly, to take this one image. She took like a 3-minute flight across town, burning like 500 gallons of fuel. And even people on the left who are, I guess, probably would be fans of this type of thing, they look at her and go, yeah, it's just a little bit weird. It feels like the further the wealth discrepancy gets, the more unstable a society becomes, which is something that I think the far left and the far right can agree on. And I will say that people are waking up, because there are some in her comments on Instagram, like, people worship the Kardashians like modern day royalty, and you get fans who are kind of simping for them, but then other people kind of in their circle are going, you're simping for ultra wealthy. That's like people who don't know you exist, who don't give two shits about you. If they cared about, there's the image of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and someone else, and they're seated together. And they're like, oh, these are all socialists. You go, yeah, but I mean, like, Bernie Sanders got like 4 homes and multiple cars. He's worth millions of dollars. Or same for Warren. If they were sincere, they would sell some of those assets. They would sell some of those assets and support something else, support some part of charity. You go like, yeah, they're not going to do that, because if they were, they would have already done that. Like Bernie Sanders, you want to create a society where people are living in the pod and eating the bugs, and same for all these other people. And they go like, yeah, but these are ultra wealthy people, at least compared to the rest of us. And so, okay, why don't you just go ahead right now and start selling some assets to support people in need? And you could, maybe downsize your life a little bit. You really only need one house. It could still be nice, but you only need one house. You don't need these vacation homes when there are people in need. It's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. It's for you to support us. It's that image of the Monopoly table that Ice Cube distributed that got people they got the left just insane with them. When you shine the light in dark corners as you're not supposed to, and it's the wrong people shining the light. Like Ice Cube, credit to him for that. That the Monopoly, when we stand up, it's all over. And you look around and you go, it's like the left got completely subverted from class warfare to race warfare. Somewhere in the 90s is when it really kind of clicked over, and the right got subverted by neocons somewhere, I don't know, maybe in the 80s. But the far left and the far right, the ones who are not subverted by that, they could actually come together to look at this and go, oh, maybe there shouldn't be homeless tent cities on one hand and people with $80 million jets on the other. Like, we can both agree on that, right? Maybe we should come together and at least agree on that. But what the subverters and corruptors do, the Soros and Schwabs of the world, is they keep the left and right from talking to each other, because it's like Occupy Wall Street. They had that for a little while. They started to shine the light on the banker types and realized, oh yeah, we're going to have to subvert and corrupt this class warfare to race war. So actually, the white guy in Idaho who's a plumber who made $80,000 last year is actually your oppressor, not these other people who are worth over $20 million in personal wealth. I'm not talking about businesses, but I mean the kind of thing where they have an $80 million jet and can fly around, or Chelsea Handler can fly her dog across the country, burning 50,000 gallons of fuel because she wanted the dog on her East Coast, one of her East Coast mansions, and said, you can look at that and go, oh, wait, if we weren't subverted by these like Schwabs and Soroses, wouldn't we reach a reasonable conclusion left and right to go, yeah, this, whatever you want to call this discrepancy in wealth between this ultra wealthy people who are flying over homeless tent cities. Oh, we just don't want this. Why don't we just take away some of their stuff and, distribute it to the people, like set something up to say, yeah, wealth over a certain arbitrary amount is not beneficial to society. Like both the far left and the right can agree on that. Most people would agree on that. It's like, yeah, why haven't we reached that conclusion? Like, why don't we work together? Because the Bolsheviks who control the media are telling they're telling the left not to talk to people on the right. If the left and the right sat down and talked, to go, listen, we're not going to agree on a lot of things, but we can agree on this one thing. Let's start with one thing and be reasonable adults. So yeah, homeless tent cities, people who are hungry, and people who are living in the street, and some freezing to death in the wintertime, that doesn't need to exist when you have a society with people with $80 million jets. Let's start with that one thing. Or Nancy Pelosi with $140 million, or Elizabeth Warren worth over $100 million, or Bernie Sanders, the quote-unquote millionaire socialist. It's like none of this stuff needs to, and there's plenty of people on the right too. You're like, yeah, it doesn't have to happen. When you're, the consent of the governed, if we stand up, this is all over. You're sounding just like a socialist. Like labels don't matter. You can look at this, you want to call it Weimar or the French Revolution. You can look at wealth discrepancies this vast. And even if you're in that wealthy, ultra wealthy club, you know that it's not stable, at least for your offspring. Like there's going to be a massive upset, and there's going to be a lot of people hurt in any kind of civil unrest like that. Because eventually you got all these millions of people who are at the homeless tent city level, or maybe a little bit above that, and realize like, oh, yeah, this doesn't need to go on if we don't want it to go on. There's millions of us, and there's only hundreds or a few thousand of them. It's like maybe a level of wealth over $20 million, we should do something about that. Oh, what a reasonable conclusion. At least, give it a shot until something else changes. People doing this kind of stuff, like environmentalism seems to be a trigger for a lot of people, but the left wing is so carefully managed by these puppet masters, where the right wing is a little freer because we don't have to be politically correct. We can just be honest on Telegram and Gab and have all this stuff out in the open. So, I mean, what a wild idea for the left and the right to sit down and talk. Oh, but those guys are commies and those guys are Nazis. Those are just words that people have labeled you. If you want a common solution, if you want to work on one problem, why not work together to solve one problem? This might be too much for you too. I don't know. It's a challenge. Every day is a challenge to get through these videos. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Subscribe Star, and I'll see you guys all next episode.